Disclaimer: the following is a parody and analysis on a fictional matchup, discussing a fictional clash between fictional characters. The goal is to provide a comprehensive look on power scaling regardless of your level of expertise. Also, I don't deem myself a primarily Dragonball or Sonic channel, I only recently got into the latter, so do correct me if I get things wrong in the comments.
Demons, they're after me! Hey, they watch me! They're in my head! The demons are in my head! Don't do it! I shows me! Fuck you up!
Metal Sonic and Perfect Cell, the most prized creations of mustache-donning mad scientists hell-bent on ending the spiky-haired protag who can go golden. The lifelong goal is to be better than others, to the point of developing a massive obsession with a concept of perfection and with an ego to match. They can both evolve even further beyond into quote-unquote super forms of power obtained by replicating other beings into their being. They both steal the iconic moves and techniques of side characters, including but not limited to the spiky-haired protag, the edgy rival, villain-stirred heroes, and world-conquering tyrants. Lastly, they're both defined by the nigh unstoppable nature, although not without a manipulative streak in them as well. The connections between these two are simple enough. I think it's a great matchup for both, but I think their contrasts are equally as interesting, if not more. Cell is a trash talker. Metal really only talks when he enters his Neo form, and even then he's very pragmatic about his choice of words. Despite being evil, Cell can show mutual respect for fighters like Goku, whereas Metal hides a scolding, boiling hatred underneath his cold exterior, especially towards Sonic. Metal Sonic is fully robotic, while Cell is more so organic. He's kind of an artificial human. It's a term that mostly exists only in Japanese. Pause this if you wanna read, it's very interesting. Perfect Cell was an imperfect being that carries a superiority complex that matches his name, looking down on the very idea that he could have any flaws, fueled by delusions of perfection till the very end. Metal, on the other hand, is an essentially perfect being who carries a massive inferiority complex, in which he is always faced with the truth that he is not the real Sonic, but he masks it with a superiority mask. Okay, I gotta talk about how much I grew to love Metal Sonic as a character doing my research for this matchup. I already had an amazing first impression back when Bowser vs Eggman first dropped, and he did not disappoint ever since, at least in the comics. How perfect it is, no pun intended, that a robotic rival to a being synonymous with wind-like swiftness is defined by how stuck he is in his own body, forever unable to grow as a person, physically trapped in a shell resembling the thing he hates the most, yet wants to be above all else. There's this one scene in the comics where he tries to infect himself with a zombie virus, desperately trying to prove that he is a living being, only for the liquid to fall off of him as if he were any other object. And then we get this shot right here. Like, why didn't I get into Sonic sooner? This is fire! Like, Cell, I love you buddy, you were hilarious in Dragonball Abridged, which was my introduction to you, sorry. But when it comes to team scaling, you are out of your league buddy. So let's see how you do in a physical fight. Like and subscribe for more power scaling stuff, and let's see which artificial copy is truly gonna win this imitation game. A long time ago, the Red Ribbon Army threatened the world's peace and harmony, aiming to dominate all things. And then Goku came along, the One Monkey Man army, who probably squashed the Red Army underneath his sandals. Evil never dies, however, is lips, as proved by Dr. Gero, who swore revenge on Goku. By the assembled DNA samples of the strongest combatants on Earth, Gero created his magnum opus, Cell. Then, after various time travel shenanigans, absorbed androids and questionable decisions from the very same heroes Cell is composed of, we get Perfect Cell, a being drowning in his own self-image and ego, to the point where he announced a tournament of power, oops, no, you wish buddy, a tournament of martial arts to fight the strongest heroes. He was then defeated by the son of the same man Cell was built to destroy, Gohan. I personally really dig this narrative decision, you know, the quote-unquote son of the OG Dragon Ball villains losing to the literal son of the OG Dragon Ball protag. It's like poetry or something. Anyway, Cell is technically only 6 years old, but that does not stop him from channeling the fighting prowess of the martial arts masters he's made of, whether it's the cunning of Piccolo or the hand-to-hand mastery of Goku. leading his enemies into a false sense of security before crushing their spirits. So while his battle IQ is pretty damn high and he can be decently manipulative, I can't quite call him a genius, you know? He's more street smarts than book smarts. Sadly, the only quote-unquote parents he's made of that would prioritize intelligent decision making are kind of overshadowed by the rest of his gene pool. There are geniuses, there are madmen, and then there's Dr. Zyro Robotnik, whose intellect threatens all things cuddly, natural and adorably lively. How fitting it is for him to challenge someone free as the wind, and try to forcefully harness chaos itself. And how frustrating must have been to admit that the best way to challenge the fastest thing alive is to develop his own spin on things. Metal Sonic, who soon became a worthy opponent for the original and a strong contender for the title of the best invention ever crafted by the not-so-good Doctor. Ever since, the replica came up with all kinds of original tricks, but mostly borrowing things created by someone else. That's AI for you, whoa! He's shockingly proven to be on par with Sonic if not above him in pretty much every iteration, and this totally did not result in a few existential crises or two, but it did result in a pretty terrifying villain that can't be bargained or reasoned with. So whether he's waving his own flag or the Eggman Empires, one for your life. The thing about Metal Sonic's level of skill is that it's kinda wonky. On one hand, you have Sonic Free Riders, in which Metal Sonic is perfectly able to copy not only powers, but extreme gear riding skills. On the other hand, you have the comics, in which he does not possess the knowledge of Eggman's whereabouts and thus needs to interrogate Sonic, despite having already copied his biodata. So you would think that information would be stored in that biodata, yet it's seemingly not. So what I'm getting here is that he can copy the part of your mind that says how to do X, with a corresponding power obviously, but not the data that doesn't directly translate into a specific action. He can keep up with skilled fighters per se, like the Kingdom Warrior Knuckles or Sonic himself, who does know a little bit of Kung Fu and even impress the ninjutsu master Espio. But when it came to facing the Kung Fu Ninja Master, however, it did not go well. Couple all that with Cell being much more used to actual fights, possessing the fighting knowledge of martial arts masters, keeping up with Goku and being potentially able to tactically exploit Metal's weakness of getting jumped on with his clones, I think Cell takes a very solid edge in skill/battle IQ. Overall intelligence, however, is not close. Once he enters his Neo form and gains the newfound ability called Talking, Metal Sonic possesses the intellect of the Dr. Eggman himself, the same mind capable of crafting machines that warp the fundamental pillars of reality, the same mind equal to Tails, who casually builds ships that travel to dimensions and can reprogram a computer using dishwasher detergent. In Sonic Heroes, he's even able to manipulate 4 whole groups of people to fuel his world domination plans, which failed, but commendable effort, and still better mental achievements than anyone that has both Frieza, Goku and Vegeta's brain cells could ever hope for. All due respect. I think this Reddit post sums it up pretty nicely. Metal Sonic takes intelligence. Perfect Cell is famously solar system level thanks to his solar Kamehameha, and solar system is a tier I notice most verses usually skip. 98% of the mass in our solar system is thanks to a yellow sun, with all other celestial bodies being quote-unquote just the 2%, so it's a more nuanced tier compared with one planet or one star, you know? But it's still higher to where a lot of power scaling characters usually cap at, without delving into reality reversal territory. I don't know, I just think it's an underrated tier of power. Here's the thing though, Imperfect Cell should already be above that, because he scales over first from Frieza, who destroyed Planet Vegeta. That explosion was visible from outside the galaxy, which some interpret as implying multi-solar system levels of energy disposal, depending on how one calculates the speed radius. It can be pumped all the way up to galaxy level, however, as it should be stronger than cooler. Plus he killed his own version of Trunks. But I am sure you clicked on this video knowing about the idea of Cell potentially scaling to universe level by taking every statement literally. Whether we're talking Frieza forms he should scale over, Namekian sensing energy pulses from their home planet, Piccolo feeling the very universe tremble, guidebooks, or Android 16 just stating it out loud. Not gonna lie, as far as statement scaling go, I've seen much worse and wonkier examples. Universe level cell, however, not gonna lie, it sounds pretty reasonable, not ridiculous at all. If you want to believe Dragonball solar systems have infinite stars, we'll reach the same conclusion anyway. In power scaling terms, we will call this high universal, aka destroying an infinitely sized physical space on all 3 dimensions. Keep in mind, however, 3 dimensions, not the 4th dimension, aka time, meaning that if Cell were to win, it would have destroyed the entire universe and be left to float there in a physically empty void, but that still has the concept of time, however, which remains unaffected. Keep this in mind later. The teensy itsy bitsy problem with statement scaling is that we now gotta do the same with Metal Sonic and his statements, which, oh boy. Take for example the multiple times he's been described to be Dr. Robotnik's greatest creation, which should put Metal either above or the same level as many of the good Doctor creations, including the Egg Dragoon, empowered by a conceptual planetary force, the Final Egg Blaster and its constellation Weapon Might of 5 Exaforce, which is multi-solar system level, the Super Egg Robot, which keeps pace with versions of Sonic that scale directly to the universe affecting Chaos Emeralds, the Egg Salamander, which drained the full power of the Soul Emeralds, which we're gonna make 2 universes collapse on top of one another, Eggman's Fleets, which routinely operates across infinite space and dimensional collapse scenarios, and the Egg Wizard, which is stated by Eggman himself to scale above the Chaos and Soul Emeralds, and wielded power capable of controlling parallel universes plus higher dimensional realms where apparently dreams take place. So if we're comfortable inflating Cell to universal level via statements, we must accept that Metal very likely scales above machines that casually operate on a multiverse scale. And again, Metal Sonic just has a shockingly consistent track record of scaling to, if not above, Sonic himself. Super forms that originate from the Chaos Emeralds, like Super Sonic and Super Neo Metal, consistently described as affecting the entire universe itself, which can range anywhere between an infinite space to a structure containing parallel worlds and infinitely sized higher planes of existence, like Imaginary World and the cyberspace. Super forms directly fight beings like Solaris, a super-dimensional entity that consumes entire timelines, or the Time Eater, which erases spacetime itself. Not only can Super Sonic battle these beings, but it took nothing short of 3 super forms to bring down Metal Sonic in his Metal Overlord form, which further solidifies his scaling. Now, if we incorporate filler and movie scaling, things for Cell get slightly better. In Dragon Ball GT, Cell and Frieza train in Hell and are portrayed as surpassing Buu Saga tiers. If that scaling is accepted, and we scale GT Cell over Kid Buu, yes, the good old dimensional destabilizer Kid Buu, this would edge at least into low multiversal levels of power. Here's the problem, the Buu saga introduces clear escalation. Super Buu and Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks tear open the dimensional barrier of the hyperbolic time chamber, and we never get any of these in the Cell saga. Metal, on the other hand, wields a power that regularly challenges timeline erasing beings, exists and moves in space without time, scales to cosmology damaging entities repeatedly, and unlike Cell, who was vaporized by an attack stronger than his own solar system busting Kamehameha, super forms regularly tank attacks from beings designed to wipe out entire cosmological structures. I know, it's always funky to place characters at such high levels of power you never think to place them as if you look at the source material, because like, oh look, here we have the ever multiversal Goku getting his momentum halted by a fire hydrant. All hail the high complex multiversal fire hydrant. If you wanna go by the absolute high hands, you still end up with a Cell who can quote unquote only destroy an infinitely sized physical space. Metal's higher hands, however, putting on the same tier as beings that threaten infinitely sized spaces and the concept of time, which is 4 dimensions, multiverses, concepts, Solaris, Titans, the Time Eater, you name it. It's just another conversation entirely. Imagine if Perfect Cell was there when Zamasu had a multiversal crash out and was actually able to accomplish anything. Cell was just hit by a giant can of bad luck by leaving the series before he delved 10 toes into multiversal mambo jumbo, and he's now one dimension behind his opponent because of it. That's what happens when you have too much of a perfect design, no one wants to draw it anymore. Due to Cell obviously massively overscaling Kid Goku dodging lasers, he gets faster than light scaling as a baseline. His solar Kamehameha, stated to destroy a solar system in seconds, reaches attack speeds thousands of times over the speed of light, roughly 2.53 thousandths, just for the blast reversal. Cell comfortably sits in the massively faster than light range, however, because during Goku's 6-day field trip to Namek, his meteor dodging feat has been calculated to roughly be around 9.5 trillion times the speed of light. Applying the standard 50 times Super Saiyan multiplier, which in Perfect Cell should scale to given that he fought a Super Saiyan in that state, that will get us around 475 trillion times the speed of light, and from there on, things just get crazier. Goku and Pikkon crossing the infinite afterlife in finite time suggests infinite speed interpretations. Cell also gains instant transmission, a technique that functions by moving to a realm where time does not flow and arriving instantaneously at a target. In power scaling terms, movement in a timeless space or crossing an infinite space in a finite time qualifies as infinite or inaccessible speed. If one again accepts the events of Dragon Ball Z Return of Cooler, where Metal Cooler intercepts Goku's mid-instant transmission, and this happens before he fights Cell, this would imply reacting within or to an instantaneous level, an argument some use to push top-tier DBZ characters into immeasurable speed territory. Realistically speaking though, Cell most consistently sits at extreme but finite massively faster than light speeds with solid arguments for infinite. Metal Sonic scaling is shockingly consistent because he is almost always portrayed to be Sonic's equal or superior. On the lower measurable end, scaling to Sonic combat feats places him easily at 17,000 times speed of light. Scaling to Shadow reacting to the Paradox Prism's universe-shattering explosion pushes calculations at a high 733 quadrillion times the speed of light. Base Sonic has traversed the infinitely sized Night Palace and moves in an erase or stop time, granting us both infinite and immeasurable speed scaling, which I'm gonna give you the definition of in a minute. Super Sonic fights Solaris, whose attacks manifest simultaneously across past, present and future, requiring movement beyond linear time. Likewise, during the Time Eater fight in Sonic Regenerations, Super Sonic moves through time itself. Super Neo Metal Sonic and Metal Overlord, the forms of Metal Sonic, should scale to these forms. In power scaling language, immeasurable speed exceeds infinite speed because it transcends linear time entirely, rather than merely traversing infinite distance. Thus, base metal sits at infinite speed, while Super/Overlord forms should comfortably reach immeasurable to a potentially layered immeasurable tiers of speed, with explicit time-transcending combat feats. Quantitatively and qualitatively speaking, Metal's upper scaling simply surpasses Cell's most consistent interpretations no matter what. Unless you wanna fully commit to the highest non-canon Dragon Ball interpretations, Metal Sonic just easily takes the speed advantage, especially in his Super or Overlord states, by like an entire dimension of difference. Again. This is quite possibly the most interesting stat to discuss for this matchup, since being relentless villains who almost always come back is kinda their whole thing. I mean, one of them is purple and the other is a robot, of course. As the name would imply, Cell's regeneration works down to the cellular level, meaning that he will always regenerate, thank you Namiki and Jeans, from any attack as long as even just one nucleus remains. That is pretty fucking crazy for a non-comic book character, not gonna lie. On top of that, Saiyan DNA also grants him something called a Zenkai boost, which results in Saiyans getting a strength power up in response to a close call with the Green Reaper itself. Now, on paper, this does sound like a deadly combination for any of Cell's opponents, until you realize that having something that always puts you away from the brink of death and a power up that activates only when you are near the brink of death is not an ideal combination in practice. In canon, Cell received a Zenkai boost once after being reduced to a single nucleus. Any other time he just regenerated while getting nothing except exhaustion. In comparison, Metal Sonic is a relentless machine said to literally possess infinite stamina, and his Neo form puts him on some T1000 liquid state, but the super forms that allow him to go toe-to-toe with Cell have an established time limit, and his ceiling is generally less potent and versatile in comparison to Cell's. His durability is enough to contend with various super forms, so we end up with a deja vu situation harkening back to the likes of Diokard or Shigaito, where one opponent has vastly better survivability and regen, while the other is more so a durability merchant who doesn't heal as well when he is damaged. In my honest opinion, and this might sound like a hot take, the safest bet would be to call this category a tie, as they both possess different means to keep going. Another funny thing about this matchup is that both combatants pretty much get the most iconic moves and or powers of the heroes and or villains they took from. From Cell we get Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, Frieza and his father King Cold. From Metal Sonic we get Sonic, Shadow, Knuckles, Eggman and Espio, with more to come, but hang on a minute. Ki, natural life force that flows within every living being. Cell can briefly enhance his physical stats by channeling it. More Ki equals more strength. Kaioken. Kaioken is a technique that Kaioken multiply your Ki reserves, boosting your stats and senses at the cost of bodily harm. Flight, still thanks to Ki. Can he fly now? He can fly now. Telepathy. Somehow, during the Namek saga, Goku is able to read Krillin's mind via physical touch. Cell has Goku cells inside him, so he should be able to. Telekinesis. For whenever you want to create a perfectly circle-shaped arena with squares. Instant transmission. By latching onto a key signature, Cell is able to teleport between one person to the next. Finger Blast. With Special Beam Cannon, he charges up a key in his index finger and a thin energy beam is fired as Cell angrily points at you to death. But he's not really angry, just disappointed. If he's angry, he's just gonna use the death beam instead. Ki Blast. He can spam small blasts of energy that still pack quite a punch. Look mom, 2 ends or 1 end. Big bang attack in that case. Gully Gun is a powerful purple energy blast, the way behind the slaughter of many planets. But Solar Flare is just gonna blind you. That Saucer on the other end is the second scariest space disc you could ever associate with an alien. The first one is for Invincible. Kamehameha! The most iconic Ki blast in all of Dragon Ball. Cell's final variant is officially called the Solar Kamehameha, because it was about to destroy the solar system. Regeneration. Again courtesy of Namekian DNA, Cell can regenerate for as long as one piece remains. It's real. Zenkai Boost. If you survive and recover from a near-death experience, Saiyan DNA will make it so that you get even stronger from what didn't kill you. Usually an awful advice from a psychological standpoint, but that's exactly how this power works. Cloning. He can multiply himself via Cell Juniors, and he probably doesn't pay child support. Sonic Boom. Metal can perform an air dash that grants a speed increase with temporary invulnerability to boot, damaging enemies with mere physical contact. Hammer Punch. He can slam the ground with enough force to shake the very earth and briefly immobilize foes. With Knuckle Slam, he does the same thing, except with a flashy explosive energy field this time. Bat Card. On the topic of explosions apparently, by copying Rogue's butt-shaped grenades, he can throw bombs that surround him and anyone he wants. ESP stuff. He can briefly confuse the enemy with mind control or throw them around with telekinesis. Helicopter. He can fly using his rocket booster. Chroma Camo. He can turn invisible, intangible, and because why not, he's even faster in this state. Lots and lots of shields. And I do mean it. Metal Sonic packs all kinds of shields to shield himself with or to imprison others inside of. From the iconic Black Shield or the crystal attack from his Metal Overlord form being so potent that it can restrain Super Sonic. Chaos Energy. In Sonic, Chaos powers are energy-based abilities driven by the 7 Chaos Emeralds, said to manipulate all of space, time, matter, and when combined, the universe altogether. It can be weaponized in more simple ways during combat however, such as by firing a bunch of solidified bolts of Chaos Energy in big or small energy bursts. Chaos Regeneration. A weird technique seen in Sonic X that uses Chaos Energy to self-repair or heal. Chaos Control. The most iconic technique in this bunch and a personal favorite of a certain perfect life form, allowing the user to slow down and or stop time, teleport, multiply oneself, or create space-time distortions. Super transformation. The user can break all limits and fuse with the Chaos Emeralds themselves, receiving a boost in invulnerability, strength, speed, and flight. Neo Metal Sonic. This form unlocked a new level of sapience and cunning for the Robo Hedgehog, on top of a sleek T-1000-esque liquid composition. This adds shape-shifting into his power set, like when he posed as Sonic when he kidnapped Froggy and Chocola. Overlord. After absorbing the biodata of Team Sonic, Team Rose, Team Shadow, and Team Chaotix, Metal evolves into this massive, dragon-like robot. And I'm just gonna say, if you're a character that can transform into a kaiju of some kind, you are making it into my top 10 list no matter what. I don't make my rules. Except I do because it's my channel, but whatever. Anyway, this Metal Overlord can go toe-to-toe with Super Sonic and stop time for 20 seconds. Super Neo Metal Sonic. Yes, it may be weird that the kaiju form is not the most powerful form, but I actually prefer it that way really enough. I don't know, it gives me Azura's Rat vibes. It gives me this idea that the ultimate form is just a calcified version of the colossal power demonstrated earlier, just with more finesse, you know? Anyway, it gets the super form scaling. We already went over the strength category. The two are evenly matched in a lot of different ways. They can both fly, they can both teleport, so insert Bleach gif here. They both got force fields, energy blast, stat multipliers, regen, and telekinesis. Perfect Cell takes overall range, as in his lasers probably reach a further distance from A to B, but Metal Sonic simply comes with much more defensive options, versatile powers, battlefield control, and generally hexy stuff. It can phase and stop time, for God's sake. What are you hoping for me to say? I'm trying to make this sound engaging. You know, a matchup is big fiction when it creates a whole new category to look at. The big question of this matchup goes as follows. Can Metal Sonic effectively copy Ki? After all, Cell is a bioengineered organism, making him perfectly viable to grow, train, feel emotions, have a strong fighting spirit, yada yada. All things that should be inaccessible to Metal Sonic, who's, you know, a machine. No cells, no metabolism, no soul, no ki circulation, no Zenkai boost, and probably no bitches. Oh, never mind, I stand corrected. To both my understanding and apparently a good chunk of the people behind this debate, the answer should be yes, he can. Metal can copy the biodata of other lifeforms with a glance. Not just physical traits, mind you, but abilities usually reserved for lifeforms. In the comics, Team Sonic was worried about Metal getting close to blades and absorbing her fire powers, which are 1% natural, or him replicating stuff like the Chaos Energy, another life-fueled energy system. We aren't comparing like cursed energy to My Hero Academia quirks here. Chaos Energy and Ki are pretty damn similar. Not gonna lie though, Ki gives me the same vibes as the Force, while Chaos Energy highly reminds me of Spiral Energy from what I understood. Fitting that I'd say that because things for Cell just spiral from me. Cell cannot replicate Metal's power via absorption, simply becoming organic for me to latch on to, as if it was metal or something. Meanwhile, Metal's speciality is copying biodata from living beings, and Cell is a talking, walking combination of biodata from living beings. This is gonna be like when Shaggy and Scooby were stuck in the same room as the cotton candy monster. So the minute Cell starts saying something like, you can't kill me, I can regenerate down to a single cell. What is stopping Metal Sonic from going, don't you mean we can regenerate down to a single cell? But there might be hope. I compiled together 4 possible win cons Cell might potentially have if the cards are in his favor. Number 1. Waving bye-bye. If Cell can do anything Piccolo can do, from either the biological aspect or the pew-pew energy side of things, could Cell use the evil containment wave on Metal after, you know, summoning the recipient thingy via the apparently inherent Namekian power of materializing things that apparently Piccolo Cell should have? After all, it has been proven to work against much stronger people than the user. Even Zamasu could not escape on his own, and that dude can hop between universes and timelines. Well, you could argue that giving Cell abilities he never used is already rather contentious, but even with abilities he was shown to have, Cell was very prone to act irrationally when put under stressful situations, like straight up tweaking, blowing up islands, randomly spamming key blasts at Vegeta, or trying to nuke the planet twice. Speaking of Veggie, and assuming we're now talking about a level-headed Cell, he still has just too much of that Saiyan pride and DNA to favor quote-unquote cheap victories over his last for a battle. Just think how many times he allowed characters to power up to the fullest because in his mind, defeating them at their best is the ultimate demonstration of his perfection. Also, there's this fella called Mephiles in Sonic who was able to break out of being sealed by using Shadow's power, the same power Metal currently possesses via biodata. So yeah, win con denied. Number 2. Time. Nuh-uh. Can Cell get into Trunks' time travel machine, go back into the past, and kill Ivo Robotnik before Metal gets invented? I mean, it would be a good plan if it were for two things. Both Sonic and Dragon Ball go by split timeline rules, so Cell would just be creating a new Eggman-less timeline. Number 2, the split ballpark Metal Sonic should inhabit goes beyond the concept of time itself, so the image of Cell traveling to the time stream in the time machine only to turn around and see Metal right behind them is both an accurate image and probably pretty terrifying if you were in Cell's position. Win con number 3, Rage Quit. Can Cell win by channeling his inner Frieza and pull a planet-destroying Rage Quit against Metal? Metal is a machine, it does not need wit. He can fly in space just fine. Denied. Win con number 4. Anything you can do, I Kaioken better. Now I saved my favorite win con for last. This was suggested by Reddit user Xolon6, who says the following. What if Cell tricks Metal into replicating the Kaioken ability, which strengthens power while straining the limits of the body, pushes it to times 100, leading to Metal accidentally blowing himself up? This is actually a surprisingly clever tactic that not only will lead to an intelligence-centered victory rather than a tech potency-centered one, and I always love when those pop up, but apparently Metal himself does have the bad habit of overcharging his own circuitry, so there would be a precedent. This would happen as a result of Cell noticing Metal keeping on copying his old flow, so maybe he tried to make him replicate their weaknesses as well. Cell is no stranger to playing dirty after all, and this would be in character since he is still letting our opponent power up, so he has a win con. This actually works. Couple that with a Zenkai boost and regeneration allowing an increase in strength, and it might not be a complete stomp. Conclusion. So, how's the situation looking for Cell currently? He packs equal survivability and experience to Metal, surpasses him in skills and battle IQ, potentially superior stats in base form, before Metal fully powers up, and could trick him into replicating the Kaioken with unfortunate side effects. On the other hand, Metal Sonic comes with superior intelligence, incalculably superior stats, with like 1 infinite dimensions apart at minimum, much more potent powers and abilities that offer more versatility, battlefield control, and space-time manipulation, would not play with his food as much as Cell would. His invisibility would work on Cell since he cannot sense ki in machines, can't be absorbed, and can replicate damn near everything Cell has, which would nullify the only ties he might have had at the start of his fight. And on top of the other fail win cons that Cell cannot do. So it's shaping up to be a pretty straightforward Metal Sonic victory, but I still think it's a fantastic matchup for both with a lot of animation potential, as I'm sure the powers I listed for both conveyed. The collab we're getting for the animation department is already all kinds of hype. But can we talk about the music potential? A rock rendition of Perfect Cell mixed with the one of Metal Sonic boss themes from the games? Any of them? My favorite picks for the track title are either Magnum Opus, War and Madoff, Perfect, or The Imitation Game. I think all these title ideas slap harder than Metal Sonic's right hand. And I think Devil Ultimate's unfortunately last episode on the show is shaping up to be nothing short of perfect. But until then, doing lots of other, I'll do the same. Hoko Krypton, hoping I made your day slightly better.